With the recent news that the World War Hulk storyline is soon to be adapted into an MCU property, many fans have been ecstatic to see Hulk finally take center stage in a story that revolves entirely around him, his character journey, and his adventures, especially seeing as the last solo Hulk entry took place over a decade ago, back when the MCU was in its infancy. Many fans have been avidly awaiting another solo Hulk project in the MCU, claiming that the Hulk and Bruce Banner are ripe wells of storytelling potential that are worthy of being explored, which is a completely valid claim, and now it seems that their longtime wishes are finally being fulfilled. While Marvel Comics has an affinity for adapting comic storylines that are both well known as well as obscure, the fact still remains that a large portion of the MCU fans may not be highly knowledgeable about much of the comic source material. So stick with us, watchers of the Marvel Multiverse, as today we'll delve into a being known as Worldbreaker Hulk, who was born as a direct result of the Planet Hulk and World War Hulk storyline. So let's explore in particular this iteration of the Incredible Hulk, and explore what makes him so formidable, as well as talk a little bit about the storyline from which Marvel is pulling for this event. Before we get into why this is arguably one of the most powerful iterations of the character, let's set the stage for both the events of this comic issue and how they are directly related to the current state of the MCU. In the comics, the original World War Hulk story directly follows the events of the Planet Hulk storyline, in which Hulk was banished to outer space by a group known as the Illuminati. The comic Illuminati lineup consisted of several highly reputable characters, including the likes of Tony Stark, Professor X, Doctor Strange, and Black Bolt, among several others. The Planet Hulk storyline may sound familiar to some avid viewers, as it was actually a heavy contributing factor to the Hulk's MCU arc in Thor Ragnarok, wherein our favorite Green Goliath becomes a gladiator on Sakaar. Through the MCU, the Hulk was a victim of self-imposed exile and was not forcefully banished beyond his control. Once on Sakaar, he is initially forced to take part in the gladiatorial arena, much like his MCU counterpart, only in the source material, the Hulk bands together with the Resistance in order to overthrow the tyrannical leader. This leader is known as the Red King, and upon his victory, he comes to be the benevolent leader of Sakaar, as well as get married and have a child. Though this peace would be short-lived, as the engine of the ship on which Hulk arrived detonates and ravages his home city, killing his wife and his child, though we do not see any indication of the Hulk having a romantic relationship or children in the MCU version. There is still a 2-year gap between his exile and the events of Ragnarok that are unaccounted for, and it's hypothetically possible that something like this may have happened in this time. If Marvel does decide to introduce the existence of a romantic relationship at some point in this 2-year gap, then they would also need to explain why the results of this iteration weren't seen or referenced in Thor Ragnarok. But again, this is speculative and has yet to be confirmed, as the events will likely take place after Thor Ragnarok and after the events of the Infinity Saga. We are just exploring what would need to happen in order to blend the comic and MCU storylines in accordance to one another, as the MCU stands to date. Upon Hulk's return to Earth in the comics, he proceeded to hunt down the members of the Illuminati who sent him away, and sought to destroy them outright, coming into conflict with each member one by one, ravaging the X-Men mansion, the Avengers Tower, and countless other landmarks in the process of one of his most dangerous rampages to date. This devastating bloodlust was regarded by S.H.I.E.L.D. as well as the Avengers as an Omega level threat, which is comic book terminology for really bad. Though this rampage is just one of the factors that might make this version of the Hulk one of the most fearsome to this day. The other aspect of this scenario is a being known as Worldbreaker Hulk, and this iteration was created in the closing moments of the Planet Hulk storyline upon the detonation of the ship's engine. At the end of the story, once the ship exploded, the Hulk absorbed the entirety of the latent radiation given off by Sakaar in its dying moments, and given his propensity for absorbing and harnessing various forms of radiation, this amplified the Hulk's power to a degree far beyond his standard state. This version of the Hulk is widely regarded as one of the most powerful iterations that Marvel has put to page in the years since the Beast's inception. How this will be adapted for the MCU given the Hulk's recent tenure as Professor Hulk, though, is unclear. Some have theorized that Banner's mind is actually holding the Hulk back, and once the Hulk re-emerges in his primitive state, he will have access to power far beyond what we've seen so far in the MCU. Perhaps the radiation from the Infinity Stones can give him a boost in strength, the angrier he gets, for example, also resulting in increased strength. but that has no evidence or confirmation and is simply speculative as of now. So how does World Breaker Hulk differ from the standard iteration that we've seen so far, beyond simply having amplified strength? The first major difference is his intellect, as World Breaker Hulk has spent years in Hulk form and has been able to learn and grow accordingly, instead of only being subject to short outings as he had in the past. We saw signs of this in Thor Ragnarok, as the Hulk had learned to develop speech patterns and friendships beyond what he had been led to believe he was capable of. World Breaker Hulk, however, was on a completely different level, able to strategize and develop a militaristic tactic sense, and deduce how to solve problems far beyond simply smashing them indiscriminately. This also gives him an increased level of control over his physical body that the regular Hulk can seldom maintain. Our modern Hulk is driven by rage and the desire to smash his obstacles, but World Breaker Hulk has far more self-discipline and is able to approach situations on a far more intelligent and tactical level. The mental capacity that he has exhibited has also allowed him to separate himself from Banner without harm, and with his already enhanced strength via the radiation of Eckardt, World Breaker Hulk outclasses our modern Jade Giant in just about every category. World Breaker Hulk is stronger, more dangerous and ruthless, and again, worst of all, he's far more intelligent. If the World War Hulk storyline does come to fruition, we could see Hulk face off against Earth's mightiest heroes. What event could make him this angry, though, is a question that will likely only be hinted at and potentially answered in the She-Hulk series. Nonetheless, I believe that if Marvel is to adapt the World War Hulk storyline appropriately, Hulk should be the main antagonist of the story, as he is similarly in the comic iteration. Though Marvel has an interesting challenge ahead of them with introducing this iteration of the Hulk with a backstory that remains consistent with the source material and original lore, it is undeniable that avid MCU fans have been long awaiting this iteration of the Jade Giant. And if the character is done justice, he could be an incredible asset to the future of the MCU. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of World Breaker Hulk? Are you excited to see this storyline adapted to the MCU? And how do you think this project will tie into the Hulk's roots on Eckardt that we saw in Thor Ragnarok? Also, how do you think the World War Hulk storyline will ultimately play out? And will we be seeing the most powerful iteration of the Hulk to date in this new project? As always, my friends, hit that subscribe button to assemble and join our team, and have a great day.